This sort of initially shocked me when I first saw this because I wasn't expecting this. But to sort of, tease it a bit more, uh, we all know that the Conservative Party is in a absolutely awful state, and even not just like the parliamentary party. We are talking like the non-parliamentary Conservative Party. I know someone who is relatively ish in like the Conservative Association, not local to me, but shall we say up north beyond the wall. He's told me about some of like the conversations and meetings and stuff that he's been a part of, and of the despair in the party is real, like majorly so. Um, so it is one of these very, very bizarre things that you sort of see on a very, very strange sort of thing like this. But I was not expecting this. We all know at some point Boris Johnson might return. This was sort of hinted at just last week that Rishi might get Boris Johnson's return, and I am very skeptical that Boris Johnson is even going to do that. And for once again, you know, I don't know, put it on the chalkboard at a number three, maybe, because I think this is the third time we've ever agreed with the Dean Doris. That Boris Johnson ain't going to come back and support Rishi Sunak. Why is he? What on earth? Why is he going to come back and support him? Even if it is he sees like a Starmer prime ministership as like the worst thing ever. I don't even think he's going to come back and support Rishi. I think he would rather see him lose, and then he can write for like the next, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks about how right he was in his direction, the Conservative Party. I do not see that happening, but this caught my eye in the Yorkshire Post. And this is by someone who is part of the Pudsey Conservative organisation, warning voters in the Red Wall about Johnson's return, or at least, shall we say, his possible return. So we're going to have a look at that today. But before we do get into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, like I say, do remember to click the like and share button as well. That always helps out the channel. And thank you very much to everyone who does help support the channel. So let's crack on with this then. So this comes from the Yorkshire Post, with the title of Red Wall Voters Need to Remember the Lessons of the Past as Boris Johnson Prepares to Return. So, in the unfolding drama that could only be scripted in the hallowed halls of British politics, the former PM Boris Johnson has catapulted from the annals of yesterday's news back into the plastering heart of today's political arena. With the audacity of a Shakespearean protagonist, he has once again seized the reins of the election campaign, unfurling the Brexit banner as if it were a cape in the wind, and feat as bewildering as stumbling upon a Roman senator in a Yorkshire tea room. There you go. There you go. Um, you know, potential, of course, Boris Johnson return. I don't think he's going to return. I really do not think he's going to return in the slightest. But it's good to see, of course, how a member of a red wall seat is writing on the way about this. So, as Mr. Johnson gears up for what could only be described as his magnum opus, one can nearly hear the Latin hymns of redemption, the mea culpa, mea culpa, ni maxima culpa, intertwining with all the collective sighs of the nation. The imaginary, the imaginary of the red buses, promising the NHS windfall, dancers like spectres in the public eye, a reminder of promises as substantial as fog. But let us not overlook the carnival of characters his tale has enriched. The right-wing enthusiasts who perhaps unknowingly have played news to the thriving underworld of immigrant smuggling. The symbiosis has now bloomed in the shadow of Brexit, leaving our essential services from healthcare to agriculture, including vets, in very dire quests for global talent that once flowed freely to our shores. Again, of course, talking about the Brexit problems there. Interestingly enough, you will see a lot of people, and especially the sort of conservative voters, really be, I think, the biggest people who are regretting voting Brexit and the way that they did. That seems to be at least from sort of my experience of the people I've encountered, that seems to be the case. But again, I'd be interested to see what other people think to that. If you've had sort of experience up here in the north, what you think to that. That seems to be my experience. But again, it is a personal experience. I can't speak for everyone's experience, but there you go. Brexit was obviously hailed as the dawn of a new British Empire and has now instead unfolded now in a masterclass in irony. Under its weight, the UK economy, international reputation, and the very fabric have now been strayed, if not frayed, painting a picture of a Britannia not ruling the waves, but rather waving the white flag. In the grandest tapestry of the Brexit promises, we're now to obviously lead that productivity we're now led to believe that productivity would soar like an eagle, the fishing industry would flourish like the Gardens of Eden, and red tape would be cut as easily as a hot knife through butter. Yet, in a twist of the worthy of the finest Greek tragedies, the reality is now unfolded in a very stark contrast. The UK productivity now finds itself not in the heavens, but rather navigating the labyrinth underworld. Again, is not wrong. Not wrong at all. The fishing industry now battles the very tempestuous seas of bureaucratic entanglements, the market access woes, and the red tape. It has not been cut, but now seemingly multiplied, ensnaring businesses in a very Gordian knot that Alexander himself would very hesitate to slash. And we are going to see that even more. I've talked before about the potential problems of Hull. You know, if there is a holdup in the Hull port, if there are start to be problems in Hull, now that we've got those checks not just going into Hull, but well, of course, if you're going into Hull sort of towards Europe, but obviously now back out, that's going to cause a lot of problems because if you want to get to the port in Hull, you have to go through the city centre. That will absolutely clog up the city centre. And if you know Hull, if you live in Hull, you know that can happen from time to time. Not too often, but it does happen. And it has happened in the past, even pre-Brexit, when there have been problems at the port. But now we're having those checks come in place. And I now have to start to wonder how more often that is actually going to start to affect Hull. I really, really do. So if you are in Hull, I'd be very interested to hear what you've got to say about that. The fishing industry now battles the tempestuous seas of the bureaucratic entanglements and, of course, the market access woes and the red tape. It has not been cut, but now seemingly multiplied, ensnaring businesses. Oh, sorry, we've already read that. So as Mr. Johnson now readies himself to joist at windmills, we, the audience, are now left pondering the crossroads before us. Do we embark once more into the looking glass, chasing after the sovereignty and fiscal phantoms? Or do we reflect on the inevitable lessons that history has now tattooed upon our collective psyche? The last chapter in this Brexit narrative is now a stark reminder. Historia et magia vitae. History is indeed the teacher of life. But the question now lingers on in the air like the ghost of referendum pasts. Will we have learned our lesson? The citizens in the Red Wall and constituencies are now urged to remember the saga of the red buses and think thrice before descending once more into that rabbit hole to pursue a victory as hollow as it is costly. In parting, I would now proffer a word of caution. Caveat elector, let the voter beware. In the grand theatre of British politics, where the line of jesters and monarchs blurs, the spectre endures. Yet, in this endless performance, it is the audience who must now discern the illusion from the reality, lest we applaud the tragedy as if it were a comedy. And of course, like I say, this was written by someone who is, former chair of the Pudsey Conservative Association. And you have to now sort of guess and sort of wonder where this is sort of going to take us. It did come out in the Telegraph today that apparently the again Telegraph. Let's stress this: Telegraph and quote sources within the EU didn't name those sources. I want to stress that. And it is the Telegraph writing this, saying, "Oh, the EU has rebuffed the idea that that Starmer can sort of renegotiate sort of some of the Brexit deals. Even if we did end up getting rebuffed, even if what is being said in the Telegraph are true, even if these sources do turn out to be true, there is nothing stopping us going to the EU and going, hey, can we do alignment deals? I cannot really, in all good conscience, see the EU turning that down because it is just us saying we're going to follow your rules and regulations. There's no disadvantage for the EU to say that. Now, until these sources actually come to be true, until we actually get an actual someone from the EU saying that, those sources, I think, should be sort of held at bay. And if anyone does bring this up to you, just say, well, who are these sources? Who has actually said this? Because, like I say, the Telegraph did not name its sources. It's just said, oh, Keir Starmer has now sort of turned that down. And if he has turned that down, and if that comes to be, well, now, if anything, this speeds up our return to the EU because now the original idea was let's renegotiate Brexit, let's do alignment deals, let's try and make Brexit as best as possible. Starmer's case for going back to the British public and saying, hey, look, this is Brexit, this is as good as it is going to be. The EU said they will not renegotiate. So our only option now is to help the EU economy is to sort of looking at all alternatives in rejoining the EU in some way. There is the EU association agreement. That is a possibility that we could go back into. We could always end up going maybe sort of back in sort of the Norway situation or joining sort of that. There are a number of ways Labour could sort of pursue this. We just have to see what happens. But we'll see what happens. But as I said, at the moment, those quote EU sources unnamed. There has been no other announcement or follow up by the EU on this. So until we actually get official confirmation, who knows at the moment. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.